Shikyu interpreted is 8 crown chords, one roof, or all the world under one roof. And it was a Japanese slogan meaning the divine right of the Empire of Japan to unify the 8 corners of the world. This right formed the basis of the Japanese Empire's philosophy for hundreds of years, including 1941. It also justified to the Japanese military and later explained to the world Japan's master plan of Japanese aggressive military strategy and even her attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1941, Japanese naval doctrine and military planning had been directed primarily at the occupation or control of a number of rich and strategically situated lands in Eastern and Southeastern Asia. As an expansionistic nation, Japan, under her leadership and direction, formulated plans to enlarge her influence and resources under the auspices of a broad, basic politico-economic concept called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. With this concept in mind, Japan knew that the Soviets to the north were always a worry, but they still wanted to someday take over Siberian lands east of Lake Baikal. However, Japan's immediate focus and effort was on expanding to the west and south. As a result, Japan's primary national objectives in 1941 were to end the China incident, to consolidate her politico-economic control of the China-Manchukuo area, and to integrate it with the Japanese economy as the heartland of Greater East Asia. She also hoped to gain effective control over French Indochina and the Netherlands East Indies. However, the targets of Japanese aggressions weren't so enthusiastic about her intentions, nor were the Western nations with the interests in the Pacific. As Japan became more forceful in the East, so did the reactions of many Western nations, including the United States. By 1941, Japan had moved into Vichy France-controlled French Indochina. Japan was still engaged in a war with China. They'd withdrawn from the League of Nations, and they'd made an alliance with Germany and Italy. In consequence, the United States induced punishing measures to economically restrain the Japanese, with the most punitive of these being the establishment of a complete embargo on oil and gas exports to Japan. It was against this backdrop that Japan saw American intervention in the Far East not only as a way of foisting U.S. power and influence in Japanese territory, but also as meddling in Japanese affairs by threatening Japanese ambitions. In 1941, Admiral Isoyaku Yamamoto held the office of Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, which was the highest operation command in the Japanese Navy. And most of Yamamoto's colleagues who survived World War II agree that the idea of a carrier-based attack on the United States fleet at Pearl Harbor was originated and sponsored by Yamamoto early in January of 1941. However, it was 10 months later that the Admiral's plan gained traction, and only then after a great deal of arduous and lengthy discussion. The first record of the existence of the infamous plan to attack Pearl Harbor occurred in February of 1941, when a staff officer of the 11th Fleet, Captain Genda, was summoned to Kanoya by his superior, Rear Admiral Onishi, who was Chief of Staff of the 11th Air Fleet. In strict confidence, Genda was now given a private letter which Inoshi had received from Yamamoto, broaching the idea of a carrier-based attack on the American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. In this correspondence, Yamamoto states that in the event of a war with the United States, there would be little, if any, chance of victory unless, at the very outset of the hostilities, the Japanese could deliver a crushing blow to the U.S. And this crushing blow could most effectively be executed using air squadrons based on a carrier task force, which he would personally command. The letter requested that Onishi conduct a secret study of the feasibility of such a plan, and Onishi gave Genda the assignment. 10 days later, Genda delivered a report, concluding that while Yamamoto's plan was risky and extremely difficult from a technical standpoint, it was possible to accomplish. Onishi then sent the results of Genda's study along with his own observations back to Yamamoto, where it remained, though its idea was germinating among the higher staff levels of the combined fleet. But basically, it was viewed as a pet project of Yamamoto's, primarily because the Japanese military could not see how it could be included in their overall commitment to the greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere Plan and their island ring of defense strategy. That mindset quickly changed, however, when the Pearl Harbor attack plan was submitted to the Naval General Staff in May of 1941. At that point, Yamamoto's idea was still a statement of theory, and it was postulated on two assumptions. One, the major portion of the U.S. military fleet would be at Pearl Harbor. And two, Japan could deliver a crushing blow to this fleet by a carrier-based attack. The primary argument against Yamamoto's plan was that the Japanese military naval mind could not see how it fit into their East Asia Co-Prosperity Plan.
Which stand in the way of its fulfillment is the sacred duty of Japan's Army and Navy. The Army of Japan is a well-trained, sternly disciplined force of fanatics steeled to reckless courage by a primitive moral code which assures to every man who dies in battle an immortal life among the Shinto gods.
In the spring and early summer of 1941, most of the Japanese High Naval Command was steadfastly opposed to the Pearl Harbor Plan and still vehemently allegiant to the greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, tending to believe that the ambitions of Japan might still be achieved by peaceable and diplomatic means. As such, they raised some additional and cogent objections to Yamamoto's design, such as, given the demands of the Southern Area Campaign under the Island Ring Defense Plan, Japanese air strength wasn't adequate to provide carriers, planes, and personnel for Pearl Harbor and the islands, and that even if they could, the Pearl Harbor Plan was just too risky. 2. The commitment to a single strike of all Japan's first-line aircraft carriers amounted to 3/5 of their total strength in this class. If anything went wrong, their loss would be disastrous. 3. It was exceedingly difficult to obtain reliable and in-advance intelligence about the disposition of American naval forces in the Hawaii area, and the entire plan did depend upon the presence of the major elements of the U.S. Pacific Fleet being in Pearl Harbor on D-Day. The route to Hawaii from Japan was roughly 2,880 nautical miles, and the chance that there might be a premature discovery was considerable. But by late August and early September, Japanese opinion changed. The outbreak of Russian and German hostilities gave Japanese military authorities a degree of security along their northern frontier. And the Japanese temptation to act on their new military freedom with a bold threat to the south was enormous. Furthermore, Great Britain, France, and Holland, all strong allies of the United States, were preoccupied with war concerns in Europe, making it unlikely that they could offer much military assistance to the United States in the Pacific. The Japanese mindset soon changed to the conviction that now was the time for aggressive, decisive action. And though risky, the prize was worth the risk.